Hello and welcome to a brand new collaboration between Nwins Motors YouTube channel and the TKC Magazine YouTube channel. Now, those of you familiar with the channels, and if you're watching this on Patreon, surely you are, will know that we've had a lot of success with our History File series, where we take the magazine's extensive photo archive and provide voiceover to explain the stories of some of the cars and the manufacturers and the people of the industry in the past that helped to make the industry we have today. Well, what we're doing on this series is a similar thing, using the video archive from both channels to create more extensive videos on various cars or types of cars. By combining the video archive from both channels, we can actually show a little bit more to our individual Patreon supporters than you would get from one of the channels individually. Moreover, after 12 months, this will then filter onto YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, there are another 11 episodes waiting for you on Patreon. So if you enjoyed it, then why not go to one of the Patreon pages for Nwins Motors or TKC Magazine and catch up on the rest. Anyway, without further ado, here is this month's video.
Right, my name's Craig White. I'm co-director of LB Specialist Cars.
Right, now I don't need to introduce the car. Or go through the Stratos story, because the Stratos story is a completely different story. But tell me LB's story, because just on its own, that's a beautiful thing anyway.
Well, that does obviously backdate us right back to the Lytton Cars days, as me as an impressionable 17, 18-year-old stumbling across a guy locally who manufactured Lytton Cars, who was my introduction to a Stratos Replica and my introduction to the kit car industry. And as somebody who was still at school, he basically said, if you want to get your hands dirty during the school holidays, then come along. And
that's pretty close to the way that Steve recruited me. It was just, I can almost hear him saying it.
It was, I just come and have a look at what we do in the shed. So that was me.
And so was it the Stratos shape that sort of grabbed you, or I mean, the chassis was immense, you know?
Yes, I think just for somebody who grew up in a farming community, it was just out of this world. So in an age even then where people were driving around in Austin Maestros and Land Rovers, something like that on an impressionable 17-year-old was out of this world.
So you moved on from Lytton,
so Lytton was my holiday job. From holiday job, then obviously I went away to Polytechnic for 3 years, and then by the time I came back from Polytechnic, obviously Lytton had disappeared, shall we say, and CAE had picked up the mantle. So I sort of knocked on CAE's door one day and said, you know, was there any jobs going? So I ended up working for CAE for probably 12 months, 18 months, who at the time they were sharing a workshop with a bloke who was by that time making Ultima chassis. At which point I heard Ultima were looking for car builders. So a phone call to Ted at Ultima and a 2-day trial, and next thing I was moving south to Hinckley.
So it just goes to show that in your local community you can be influenced by something when you're young, and it can influence, you know, a career.
I would say for me it was a complete freak opportunity that happened to knock on somebody's door who did this. And I say, as a kid who grew up on a farm who had no interest in animals whatsoever, I was only ever interested in tractors and quad bikes. So to then get the opportunity to work on a Stratos Replica at an impressionable age, obviously planted a seed, and here we are, what, 30 years later or something.
So you've got an opportunity. I think it was to build the car for yourself was your initial aim, wasn't it?
Yeah, I started, even in the CAE days, I started collecting parts and acquired an old Corsa chassis that sort of stagnated, shall we say. And I got as far as, I had a chassis, probably a rolling chassis with bodywork fitted and an Alpha engine sat there ready to go in. And then I probably tried to get a bit more creative than I should have done. And it morphed into something that's still buried in a container around the back of here somewhere. And it kind of obviously fell by the wayside and didn't happen as I moved around the country back to Yorkshire to do CAE Stratos Replicas for a while, back down to Ultima for a while, then up to Gardner Douglas for 10 years. And the car sort of eventually followed me but didn't progress. Yeah. I think realistically in my 20s I didn't have the skills to do what I was trying to do, but say 20 odd years later we've probably learnt a bit along the way and are in a position to redo it.
Now, I would say you've succeeded, because the one thing that sets your car apart, I think your word sums it up perfectly, the engineering. I mean, the chassis is immense. I've been out for a ride in the car with you, and it feels really, the one thing that came across is that you weren't fighting the car. That's something that's very fundamentally important from an owner's point of view. Straight away, straight out the box, you could tell it was a car that it's well set up.
Take that out of the way for the sake of your reflection. Yeah, obviously, I think you're right. Very out of the box, even the very first car was pretty good. We did have a little fiddle with spring rates from the drawing board to the first car, but fundamentally geometry and everything else has worked. So I think a huge amount of luck went into that. Yes, you can claim some of it's engineering, but there's also a big dose of luck has gone into it as well. A Stratos by nature is a very rigid chassis. So anything with a short wheelbase and a full cage is going to be torsionally rigid before you start. So that then allows you to have supple suspension, or it allows you to spring it accordingly. You don't need to make it rock hard to handle, because that doesn't actually help a car. We want the wheels to move, we want them to follow the bumps, and that's kind of what we've achieved. The switch to nitron dampers probably 5 years ago has also made a huge difference. You've gone to a top quality damper supplier, and just a stiff chassis, decent suspension and decent tyres, and we've hit a sweet spot.
So 3 litre Busso, 260 brake horsepower. Is this the 24 valve?
Yes.
Yeah. Because that's 210 before you've tickled it, isn't it?
There's 220 stock.
Right.
And then you want it to go that way.
And you've gained a fantastic reputation. The cars have been really well received by everyone that I know that's had one. You must be very happy with what you've managed to achieve.
We are very proud of the product. You know, we've worked bloody hard to get it. I don't think that covers it, but you know, we've spent a lot of time and a lot of effort. And we've also, I think one of the important things is we've never stopped developing it. It's a curse, it's not a good business model, but by constantly going through it, reviewing stuff, honing stuff, perfecting it, it makes it the product it is.
And the owners that I've spoken to all seem a really happy bunch. It seems to be a bit of a family thing between everybody. See, for me, this is the engine choice because it makes the right sounds. Yeah. And it's got about the right power. The other thing that I've noticed about the owners, they tend to be people who've got other supercars, and this is their go-to car to have a bit of fun. I've met 2 or 3 different people, and they've all got established turnkey supercars, but this is the car they go to when they want to go out for a drive, and that's by choice, not because of any other reason. And then it's just compact and they can use it.
It's a lot of fun, and I know what you're on. I know particularly who we're on about, and there's an argument, and we've said the same thing. A 300 horsepower car, you can actually use the performance on the roads. Obviously 600, 700, 1,000 horsepower supercars, they're fantastic, they're very quick in a straight line, but when do you actually get to scratch the performance? Whereas a 1,000 kilo, 260 to 350 horsepower car, you can actually go out, utilise it, have a lot of fun without spending whatever 200,000 to £1 million on a supercar.
And it's also compact as well.
Yeah.
Well, it's an absolute credit to you, and thank you ever so much for talking to us,
Yeah.
and for letting me come and have a look around.
Right, no problem.
Right, I'm Norm Bryers, I'm chairman of the Stratos Enthusiast Club, and this is my Listabel STR Lancia Stratos Replica.
So how did you decide on a Stratos Replica? Is it something you always wanted, the Stratos, or is it from rallying, being a rallying enthusiast?
Yeah, I first saw Stratos in 1974 on the RAC rally, and it was just, in them days, it was fantastic, and I thought, I like that. I've always loved them. I always used to see them on the RAC and other rallies. And then when they started producing replicas, there was Transformer back in the day in the 80s and the handmade Allura. And I thought, you know, I fancy doing one of them. So I actually built an Allura and got it on the road in '89. It took me about 18 months. And I had that for 3 years. And it was never going to be as good as what I imagined it to be, because you imagine it to be this fantastic. It's never going to live up to that realistically. So anyway, I had 3 years fun out of it, and I swapped it, and I got an Integrale, and that was my Stratos stuff done for a good while. And then, some years ago, I was looking and thinking, well, I'm getting on a bit now. So this is probably going to be my last expensive car. What am I going to go for? And you start looking at classics, and the ones that's interesting are always too much money. So I think couldn't afford them. And I thought, well, what about a decent replica? And I just looked on the scene and I thought, oh yeah, this is nice, the Listabel. So I went down to see them in, when was it, 2016, looked at what they were doing, loved it all, and I like the idea that it's not slavishly copying an original, in that they're quite happy to upgrade the brakes, put decent wheel bearings on, blah, 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 good suspension, all the rest of it. And I thought, that'll do me. It's almost a resta-modded Stratos. Not that anybody will ever do that to the Stratos, or else they'll get hung, drawn and quartered, because there's not that many of them. But it's that sort of idea, so it just suits me down to the ground, this car. Absolutely brilliant.
So, knowing how enthusiastic Craig is about the Toyota engine, was it a twist of the arm, or was it something that you wanted?
No, I started off thinking, I'm going to go for an Alpha 2.5 out of 156. And that was what I was budgeting for. I didn't have the money at the time. I thought, I don't know how the hell I'm going to get the money for this. But then I had a bit of a windfall, and I realised, actually, maybe I can go for the Toyota thing. But they're not easy to find, or they weren't easy to find, because over here in England, you only fit into 1 or 2 cars, sort of thing, so they're not easy to find. Anyway, I came across this engine from a bloke who'd bought it from Lotus, and he was going to put it into some sort of special. But it turns out this engine was built by Swindon Powertrains, so it's not a standard engine, and they blueprinted it, they put steel rods in it, blah 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 blah, for a run of cars that Lotus were going to do called the Evora 420s, and they were only going to do about, I don't know, 10, 15, 20, something like that. But it never happened back in the Danny Bahar era, where they were spending money like it was going out of fashion. Anyway, it got canned, and they had these engines and they couldn't fit them to anything, so they sold them off on the cheap, and this guy got this engine, and then his project never progressed. So I heard about it and snatched his hand off. Then all he had to do was find a gearbox, which is easier said than done. But I came across an engine and box complete from a crashed Exige, and they wouldn't split. I bought the engine and box, and I kept the box and all the other bits, and the engine, well, I did a deal with Craig, basically, so he's got that engine now. And that's how I ended up with the Toyota engine and box in it.
Well, tell me about this engine, because it is, like you said, a bit special.
Well, as I say, it's built by Swindon, so it's built and blueprinted by them. They were producing them for GT racing, GT3 racing, stuff like that. They had loads and loads of parts at one time. And well, you know, Swindon builds touring car engines and all sorts of stuff like that, and Lotus got them to build this run of engines for the limited run of Evoras that never happened, and that's how it came about. So it's got the steel rods, it's supposedly got a few other bits and pieces inside, but I can't confirm that because I'm not going to buy an engine and start taking it apart just to have a look. But anyway, when it's gone in, I mean, who knows how much its horsepower it was supposed to be, but when it got mapped, we got it on the dyno and it was making 350 horsepower, which you're thinking, oh, well, that's supposed to be standard for one of these things in an Exige. But the reason the figure was relatively low is because they'd only just mapped it. They spent all day mapping it. It was absolutely mad hot in the dyno hall, and the intake temperature was over 70 degrees apparently. And they said these things are very, very critical on intake temperatures. So they said if you're out on the open road on a decent day, said you'd get another 45, 50 horsepower on top of that. And I thought, it's a bit more like, I'm happy with that. More than enough in this sort of thing. So yeah, I'm happy with it.
So how long have you had it now?
I got it on the road 1st of March 2022. So it's not that long really.
And you built it yourself?
50-50. No, alright, I've got to be honest. 30-70. I did the rolling chassis and then I sent it back to them to have the body fitted. I brought it back, had it painted, and the deal was that they were going to finish it off because this is the important stuff. This is the stuff that you can see. And my sort of skills when it comes to drills and this and that, so I mean, if you ever come round our house, all the shelves are like that. And all the pictures are cockeyed, so it's great if you walk in like that. Anyway, there's loads of crockery on the floor. But yeah, I thought, right, I want this doing right. I'm spending a lot of money. Who's good at this? I thought, well, they're doing it all day, every day. They know what shortcuts are. They know exactly where to put things. Whereas if you do it yourself, you drill a couple of holes, then find out, oh, I'm half an inch out. And what can you do then? You're screwed. Yeah. So anyway, I let them finish it off for me, which was fortunate. So it took a while because we had the pandemic in the way. But eventually, we got it sorted out. They got it fired up. He took it for mapping a couple of times. And there were a couple of issues because we struggled on the emissions. They struggled on the emissions. And it was just down to things like it needed a bigger cat, basically, and a bit more restriction on the exhaust to get the figures correct. But once that was done, fantastic, yeah. And
being the Toyota engine, reliable as anything?
Well, yeah, I've done 6,500 miles in this now, and all I've done to it is put air in the tyres and petrol in the tank, and that's it. Never have to do anything. The oil never gets used, the water level never drops. It's fantastic. It's just as brilliant.
And is it everything you wish for?
Yeah. I mean, going back in the day when you had an Aurora or a Transformer or a Hawk or whatever, the only engines you had available initially were the Fiat twin cams, weren't they? Fiat Lancia twin cams, which were nice motors, but they were never going to be enough to make that go as fast as it looks, sort of thing. So then they started putting Alpha V6s in. But these days, I mean, the Alpha's an old engine, nice engine, but you can do better. So this is just as much power as a tuned Alpha, in fact more, but it's perfectly reliable. Yeah. You don't have to fiddle about with it. It's not got throttle bodies and you have to keep synchronising sort of hairy cams or anything like that. It's just, torque monster. Doesn't even care what gear you're in. It's brilliant for a lazy bastard like me. So
and how much do you get to use it?
Well, as I said, I've done 6,500 miles. So yeah, fair amount. Obviously, I don't take it out in the winter because I like going in a straight line rather than sideways. But yeah, it's quite a lot.
Public reaction?
Well, as you'd expect. Look at that, Dad. It's that sort of thing. Loads of people, pictures, going up the motorway, people with the cameras, all the rest of it. It's probably the slowest car I've ever had going from A to B, because every bugger wants to stop and talk about it. So if you want to go somewhere in a hurry, take a Fiat Panda. You're laughing.
And you mentioned you're the chairman of the club.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about the club.
The club, well, it's as you'd expect. It's full of fanatics, nerds and geeks.
Of the best kind?
Oh God, no. I call them Stratoses, but there you go. No, it's actually full of some really nice people. I mean, it's been going for a good while. It started off as something called the Stratos Super Site, and that fell apart apparently in about 2010. There was some problem with the domain name that fell into disuse, or somebody took it away from the club and everything went. So one of the guys decided, right, I'm going to do this proper. So he set this Stratos Enthusiast Club up from scratch, and he registered a new domain name, and he set up the forum, and he did everything and got it up and running, and it's been there since. So thumbs up to Ian Ford for doing that. But it's a good club. It's nice. You don't have to have a Stratos. You just have to like them. You know, we don't have area meetings, anything like that. There's not enough of us. There's about 130 members worldwide. Yeah, we're also affiliated to FCA Heritage. That's Fiat Chrysler, well, Stellantis now. So we're recognised by Stellantis for cars that aren't originals, which is pretty cool. So, you know, wherever we go, people like them. I've never had so many friends.
Going back to the Allura,
Yeah.
when you built that, how much was that back in the day?
I reckon I spent, I can remember back in the days of black and white, about £9,500 to £10,000, I think.
And you built that yourself?
And I did that myself
with
mostly.
The 2 litre?
Yeah. Obviously I didn't paint it. I got somebody else to trim it. The stuff that I'm crap at, I got other people to do, but the rest of it did it all myself. Yeah.
That's got to be worth about 50 plus now, isn't it?
A good Allura, like the one that you did recently, David Giause's. I mean, he's had that from new. So yeah, you'd be looking up well over £40,000 because it's a really good one.
Yeah.
There was another one at the AGM the other day, Pete Hubbard's. He's had that from new. I got to know him when I was doing mine. That's how.
Which colour was that?
That was a red one as well.
Yeah.
You can't tell them apart. They're all red. So yeah, he's had that from new, and that's been off the road for about 20 years. And he just suddenly got the urge, and he spent a lot of time getting it back on the road, and now he's improving it as he goes. He was on about sort of throwing it in the bin until I said to him, "Are you having a laugh? That thing's worth a lot of money."
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, as it stands, it's over 30 grand. So, you know.
And your old Allura, do you know what happened to that?
It's in Scotland.
Still going?
Oh, yeah. I got I part-exed it for an Integrale, believe it or not, at the Lancia dealers, and they sold it to a bloke in Bolton who just laid it up. He hadn't got a clue what he got, it turned out, and then he sold it to a fella in Scotland, a guy called Steve Struthers, and he's still got it. He had a bit of a misfortune in it. Somebody ran in the back of it, and he's still not managed to get it back on the road, but it's still there. And he was talking to me about it, and he was going to throw it away as well. He thought, oh, it's too much, until he realised that actually people have come to appreciate them more now. Because back in the day, everybody said, oh, you want a Transformer, you want a Hawk, because they're more like the original. Well, people didn't twig that actually the Allura wasn't trying to be like the original. It was trying to be a look-alike that was easy to build and that was still as much fun.
And you can use it.
And you can use it, yeah. And it was, so, yeah, now people have twigged onto them. It's a Stratos Replica. Well, replica, look-alike. And they're all worth something now. People love them. Even the originals, which were to a degree overlooked, I think, back in the day. Because everybody's Ferraris, Lamborghinis, but Lancia Stratos. In fact, Lancias generally were underappreciated. And now, people do appreciate them. You see the price of old Lancias, I mean...
Has there been a better looking rally car since though? Even
probably
the
not,
Group B
no.
ones. I love the Group B.
But it's not not a Stratos, no. And that's because you get somebody like Bertone and Gandini doing the styling, and they do like the Miura, you know, they do all the fast, posh Italian cars, the really nice ones, the exotics, and the fact that they got them to pen this, and oh yeah, come on, we'll stick a Ferrari engine in it while we're at it. Oh, good. So yeah, it's fantastic. It was well in front 50 years ago when it first came out. Now it still looks great. So timeless, isn't it? Fantastic.
And you're not going to lose a single penny on your investment. That's the joy of it. You can enjoy it knowing that you're not throwing away 12% as soon as you drive off the floor.
That was another thing when I was sort of looking for my last expensive car. I thought, you know, no matter what I buy, is it going to go up? Is it going to stay the same? So it's got to be a classic if you want to try and maintain your money. But as I said, the ones I was interested in were just unobtainable. And I looked at this and I thought, yeah, I can probably do all right with this. I should at least get my money back on it. Well, that's proved to be an understatement now. So, yeah, because they're all becoming worth serious money. So. That's the smart mirror.
That's a bit of flash.
Oh, it's got Bluetooth, you've got to do hands-free, it's got sat-nav incorporated, it's got front and rear cameras, you know, bloody name it, so yeah. So whatever you say, it's being recorded. number.
You will never get bored of this, will you?
No, you can't. Just can't do it. You get worn out, it's hard work,
Yeah.
but you never get bored.
find a face and it's found me.
That's better than finding me, to be fair.
I don't know. It's good when you want it to. So 3 litre or so, 260 brake horsepower. Is this the 24 valve?
Yes.
Yeah. Because that's 210 before you've tickled it, isn't it?
There's 220 stock.
Right.
And then